Hi, Kate.
Hi. Do you have your emotional support pillow?
Oh, I have all of them in all sizes.
I love it.
I can't live without it. It's just the natural thing. You sit down and you just like put a pillow on you because it just makes you feel nice and comfortable.
I love it. I love it.
Exactly.
Oh.
Oh, how are you doing today? What's going on? Tell me all the things.
I am doing amazing today. I was so excited to speak with you. I love anytime I get to be in your space.
So I watched your progression, right? Starting with a children's book, which was More Than Mud. So let's just start there, because where did that even come from? What made you think like, I'm going to write a children's book? Because from where you started to where you are now is fascinating. I mean, it's amazing what you did with your know-how, your smarts, and literally what you learned along the way and how you're helping other people.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for that reflection. I don't know if you feel this way, Rachel, but when you're so in it, you don't necessarily look at like, oh, I started with a children's book and this is what I'm doing now. Right. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Number one. I did start with a children's book. I actually owned, a corporate company at the time. So my corporate life was in staffing and recruiting right out of college. And I worked for over 10 years. I worked in corporate. And then when I had kids, I left the corporate world and started my own company in staffing and recruiting. So this is what I'm doing, right? Just kind of set the stage when I write this first book. And to answer your question about like, where did that even come from? If I'm being really just super vulnerable, is that I'll tell you that I was always the geek that would like prefer to sit in my bed and like open a brand new journal to a crisp brand new page with a really good pen and write. Like that would be where you would find me as like a 13, 14-year-old kid, right? Like above anything else, that's what I would love to do. If I wasn't like in a bookstore, like touching the books, right? Like I really did always love books. I always loved to write. I didn't think I was very good at it. I failed my high school English class in freshman year. So like, I didn't really think I was very good. That was all grammar, right? Now I know that there's also very different levels and types and different types of writers and all that fun stuff, right? But life told me along the way that, you can have this passion and it might be a cute hobby, but life told me along the way that it was probably just, sort of that. And so I did kind of buy into that narrative and I went on to just do this whole corporate thing. And then when I had, so I never thought in a million years I would be an author, just to kind of put a pin in that. Like never, like if I was really being vulnerable, I would say that would be a dream of mine, but I never even allowed myself to have that dream or admit it out loud. Never. If anybody ever asked me what I wanted to do, it was in there, but I would never speak it out loud because it was like, that would never, ever happen in my life. So then I have kids and, I have a toddler and an infant at this time. Okay. And I remember being in the nursery and I was putting my youngest to bed and I would always change the book. Like I would always change the ending. Like I thought they were cheesy. I thought this is not the story I want my kid to even subscribe to. So I would always change the book. And then I thought to myself one day, well, if I'm always changing the ending, like maybe other people are changing the ending. And maybe if I want a different book, maybe other moms want a different book. So then all of a sudden this idea started, right? But I was like, no. Like, what does that even mean? How could I even do that? Right? Like, that's impossible. Literally, I felt like it was impossible. So what occurred to me was that I was in the changing of the story. Really what I was doing was like breathing belief into my children. Like, it was the limiting context of the stories that I didn't want to say to them. And that's why I would change it, which is fascinating, right? To look at that. And then I realized in this kind of like, if you will, aha moment, that the reason I'm changing the story is because I have like this unwavering belief, like in these little tiny beings, like that I truly believe they have unlimited potential, like unlimited possibility. Like I really looked at them and thought, you literally can do anything you want to do. And then I went, oh my gosh, like when did that change for me? Like when did that change in my own life where I realized I don't have this unwavering belief, this confidence, this even just choice. Like I didn't even feel like I had a choice to choose that dream anymore. Right. Like, so where did this come from? And then I was like, well, if I cannot do this for myself, if I cannot show them, if I cannot even try to go after my dream, how can I expect in a million years that they're going to go after theirs? And then that was it. So it was that moment that I went, okay, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write this children's book, and no one will probably read it. It'll probably just be the bedtime story I tell my kids, but that's what I'm going to do, because even if I fall on my face, which I totally believe that I would, at least they will see that I've tried. And that's literally where that came from.
You decide to write the book. And I love the reason why, which is like, how can I teach my kids to follow their dreams and I'm not pursuing my own? But you also sort of just went ahead and did it. You didn't have people telling you, no, you can't. You didn't have people telling you what you should do. You sort of just did the thing. Do you think that made it easier for you in the long run because you didn't have limiting beliefs? You had nothing blocking the belief that you could publish? Or do you wish you kind of had help along the way?
Well, I had subscribed to that limiting belief my entire life. Like I was in, the agony of not doing it and telling myself it wasn't possible my entire life. So everything that you just described, I did all of those things. Like that was who I was up until that moment. And then I think what happens in life, for everyone at some point, and sometimes this is with finances or it's with our health or weight, or sometimes it's with a business or a decision or success, on some level, or going after a dream, but you get like this healthy level of disgust. That's what it was for me. I went like what? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like everything was stopping me up until that point. Literally, you were like, nothing stopped you. You just went and did it. Well, but like I lived like 30 years plus, right? Of like literally everything stopping me, every limiting belief stopping me from really living the dream or the life really that like I would have loved to have, gone out there and been in a bigger way for so many different circumstances in my life. But I was like, oh, I can only go this far. Oh, I can only play this big. Oh, I can only go, you know what I mean? Be this bright or whatever it is. Right. And it was that moment where I was like, literally that healthy level of disgust with myself. Like, are you just going to literally like live this vanilla life for your entire rest of your life? And then that was that. So at that point, then yes, I went and did it. Right. But it wasn't like I was like living this amazing, unlimited belief life my entire life up until that point. Like that was the defining moment that helped me to go for it. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because you also had that corporate job that, I mean, it takes a long time to get out of that like corporate mindset because you truly only feel like this is your only option, like a dream, living my dreams. Like, what do you mean? That's not like to say out loud, I'm an author. That just doesn't make any sense to you in that corporate mindset, right? Because it's everything is limiting. Everything is a block because you're growing someone else's business. But you did have your own business. So then how did you flip flop from corporate to this beautiful company that you now have with Kate Butler Books? Because what you're doing for other people to help them become authors, to help them speak the words, I am an author, is such a beautiful thing. Like, do you realize really what you're doing for people?
Thank you. Like, I guess if you ask that question, like yes, only because I know how it feels for myself to be able to say that. Right. Like after like hiding that dream for so long. So it feels like a huge privilege to be able to give other people that opportunity to be able to feel that and say that too. I think that, the corporate mindset, I love how you put that though, right? Like, yeah, they want to keep you small and limited because they don't want you going anywhere. They want you to continue to stay exactly where you are. So like, of course, but what happened was that first book went out, Rachel, and it ended up being on the bestseller charts for over 100 weeks straight. It was insane. It was insane. Like, it's like one of those things that you hear people talk about and you're like, how did that, like, what? And I had no idea what I was doing. There was like tons of really huge mishaps that happened during the production of that book and the making of that book. But somehow, some way at the end, that book ended up on the bestseller charts for over 100 weeks straight, sort of against all odds, truly. Me being one of those odds, like, what am I, like, who am I driving this bus? Like, I don't even know where I'm going. And because of that, it really catapulted us into a different space. I wasn't just an author with a book. Like, here we are with this very successful book. Here we are with people reaching out that bought the book, moms and grandmoms and teachers and caregivers. And they're saying, oh, the kids that I read this book to love this book. But I feel like I'm getting a message out of this book that's like deeper and bigger, and there's a bigger meaning here. Do you do anything for adults? Well, I had enough people ask me that at some point I kind of woke up and said, you know what? Yes, right. So that's organically how I became, a success coach doing coaching, and then I did workshops and live events, and that's how it grew into this community and into this business, right? That you talk about today. Because what happened was I had to go through a journey on my own when I was writing this book and I had to literally become, and this is going to sound very cliche, but there's no other way I can put it, I had to become the person I wanted to be if I was going to actually pull this through. Because I couldn't publish the book and get through all of the hurdles and all of the challenges, and all of the, oh my God, I'm emptying out my 401k, and oh my God, like all of these huge risks that I was taking, I was putting it all on the line. And I couldn't do that being the person that I was before that moment in the nursery, because that person never would have taken those risks. That person would have closed up shop and said, this is too hard. This is never going to work. This is never going to happen. I'm going home. I'm going to count my losses. I had to become someone different. So when people would say, how did you publish this book? How did it become a bestseller? I would say, like, I don't know, but I can tell you what I did, right? Like, I can tell you how I got here. I don't really know how that all worked, but I know now, like, I have much more. This book was published in 2013. So I get it now, but in it, I was kind of like, I can just tell you what I did. And that's what I started to do. I started to share my journey with women. And so then they started to put into practice the things that worked for me. And then they started to shift and become someone different. And then what happens when you have success, or what happens when you find like the best moisturizer, or you find a new recipe? You share it with your best friend. Immediately, you want to share it with people, right? So they were like, I want to share my journey with people. I want to write a book. And that is how Kate Butler Books really came about, is that these beautiful people that responded to the first book, the community grew, they're attending events, they're going through coaching, and then they're saying, I am different now, and I want to share this with other people because I now have a message to really get out to the world. And then we started to help other people publish their stories. And that's really where it all started.
And I love that you do that, because I tell everybody, like, we all have a story to tell. And I think a lot of us have that limiting belief of, but I'm not an author. I can't write a book. Right. And it's like, but you can, right? It's just the story we tell ourselves is really the one to start with self-love and valuing ourselves. So how did you make that flip, or how did you start making that flip to be the woman you are now? Right. Like, you are walking into the woman you want to become, because old Kate Butler, who had the limiting beliefs, couldn't be the Kate Butler on the #1 bestseller list. So what did you start to do to sort of step into the woman that you knew you had to be in order to see this project through?
Yeah. So, first of all, I agree. Everyone has a story to tell. And so what I also figured out along the way is that, well, first of all, there's only 8% of the people out there that don't want to become an author. Isn't that fascinating? So like literally everyone feels like in some way, yes, I have a story to share, is basically what that says, which is what you teach as well. So like, so that right there is mind blowing to me. But then what happens is, like, with everything in our life, is like everyone translates that in a different way. So that's what I understood that very early on, right? Because here I am, someone who failed a high school English class. Okay. So I understood, like, maybe not everyone can sit and write their autobiography from beginning to end, you know, 27 chapters in a row and say, here, let me hand it to the editor, and then we're going to move on to the next stage of the process. Some people are not that linear. Some people, it doesn't work that way. So what we started to do is come up with really creative ways that people could, that's, wow, that people could tell their story, right? And so if you are that person, then great. Like, let's work in the space that you work in. If you're a little bit more creative and you work in mind mapping, like, let's work with you in that way. If you don't want to tell a full book, right? Like if you're like, I just want to get this one story out or this one message, that's where the collectives came from, right? And be part of a collective, and you don't have to write your own book, but still be part of it, still get your message out, still get your story out. And then other people, like the way I started, say, I want to tell my story in the way of a children's book. And that's another way to tell a story. So we do it in like all these different ways, so we can really meet people where they are, because there is just not one way, right, to write a book or to tell your story. So I think that's really important for people to hear, because so many people do want to get their story out. And if they feel like, but I just don't know where to begin, or I don't know what the first step is, like, know that there are people out there like you and me, Rachel, that will meet you where you are and help you produce and tell your story in the way that works for you. I think that's really important. How did I change things? To answer that question, really the first thing I started to do was look inward instead of outward. I mean, if I can say that in the simplest way, I mean, there's a lot of things that I did. I got a mentor. I really started in this very mainstream buzzword now that we call mindset, but in 2013, not everyone was talking about it like the way they are now. So I really kind of went down this road of saying, I had this one mentor just literally kept telling me, like, whatever you want to do is possible. Whatever you want to do is possible. And I remember I used to sit there and go, like, if it was possible, what would it look like? Like, if it really, if I chose to believe this, like, I was still like teetering on, like, do I really believe this or not? I was like, but I would give myself like time each day to say, if I did believe this, what would it look like? Right. And so, like, all of a sudden that triggers something different in your imagination. And I started to go inward a lot more. Like, up until then in my life, I looked outward for everything to fulfill me. Everything was outward facing. If I was in a great mood and I was having a great day and my husband came home from work and had a bad day, I immediately went from up here with my good day to down here to his bad day. It was anything outward would affect me in that way. And I would just match my surroundings, but I'd also look to my surroundings to pick me up. In this journey, I started to realize, like, I get to control that. I get to choose that, and I can go inward. Like, I know that sounds simple, but it was a very foreign concept to me at that time. Like, I was like, if I, am having trouble with my friends, like, I don't feel good about myself. If I'm having trouble with my family, like, life is over because there's drama everywhere. Like, and I was also adding to it and participating in a lot of that. And at the end of the day, I went, like, not everything is working really great in my life, but what's the common denominator? Crap, it's me. I'm the denominator, right? Like, I'm in every single one of these things that isn't working great, right? And so how do I start to look at this and go inward and say, like, what would you create? What would you desire? How would you like it to look? And how can you just start? Like, little steps, how can you begin? And so that's really, from a very high level, like, that's the journey that I started to go on. And I had something big pulling me. This is the difference. I think you can go on a journey, but for what? Like, what are you going on the journey for? Because sometimes it's not enough for you to say, I just want to change. Sometimes it's not enough for you to say, like, I just want my finances to look better. Or sometimes it's not enough for you to say, I want to heal a relationship with someone in my family. It's just not enough of a goal, because if it was, you'd already have done it. So for me, it was like, I put out to the world that I was doing this children's book, and so I had to do it. So, like, I had this really big carrot, right? Like, I had this really big thing. So in those moments where I was like, shoot, this is hard, or like, I don't really want to dig this deeper, I don't really want to look inward today. You know what I mean? Like, you have those moments, and I went, I have to. Like, I have to step up here because I have this bigger thing pulling me. So I always suggest, like, that people are working on something or participating in something or a part of something that is, like, just scary enough to rub up against those edges in life, because it's those things that are going to pull you through the moments of change and shift. And that's what we need.
You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that was the hardest part for me was number one, it is uncomfortable to say like, oh, what do I want? And like, if money wasn't an object and I had all of the wishes in the world, what would it be? And that's uncomfortable to start to think about. Especially for me, because I'm a problem solver. So I immediately want to put like, what are the steps into action? And it's like, no, just let's imagine, right? It's hard for us, I think, just to dream, even if it's just dreaming on paper, write it all down.
Yeah.
So it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that I learned those little baby steps, right? Because we compare to everybody else, right? Oh, they're already wrote their book, or my friend's already on the bestseller, all those things. Like we compare. And it's like, not like, to do the journey's the whole point. So those little baby steps become bigger leaps eventually, right? And so I think it's so hard for us to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And once I started to realize that, which is continuously asking myself why, like, why am I feeling this emotion? Why am I feeling this way? And we're not always ready to like dig a little deeper, but you sort of have to in order to move to the next step, like to truly move to the next step and not just find yourself back to square one. The other thing I've had a hard time with is, okay, you wrote the book, marketing. Like marketing for me and like patting myself on the back and like saying all the things that I can do is so hard for me. That's the space I am in right now, where it's like, I can see all this magic that's there on that other side, but I can't take that leap to say like, I am, I can, I do. Was it hard for you when you first wrote the book to say like, oh, I'm an author, I wrote this book? Or did you feel like you were already stepping into that space where you knew like, okay, I wrote it, I got to sell it now?
So there's two questions there. So I'm going to answer both of them. Yeah, no, because they're important. So that was it hard? It might not be two questions for everyone, but it's two questions for me, and I'll tell you why. So for me, was it hard for me to say that I was an author? So my mentor at the time, she challenged me to do what you're saying and own it, and say that you're an author before you were. Like I had to say it. She's like, so when you become an author, it isn't as hard. So basically, it was like the challenge was to pull up a Word document, literally throw any type of like Google image on there that represented the title of the book, an image that represented the book, written by Kate Butler, and print it out, sign it. I'm like, sign it. Like, you like in that moment, you're like, who the heck would ever ask for my audit? Like, that is hilarious, right? So sign it, because all of this is going to happen. She was right. So the first time somebody asked me for an autograph, I wasn't like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I practiced for this, right? So I signed it and I put it up on my vision board. And then the next thing was like, basically from now on, when somebody asks you what you do, you say I'm an author. So the next time literally, of course, that week, as the universe would have it, I go in to pick up dinner for my family. And we have Primo's Hoagies around here. Like, it's just like a sandwich shop, whatever. So I go into a sandwich shop and I'm picking up this like 17-year-old boy is working behind the counter, right? And he's like, it'll be another 5 minutes. And he's just like, oh, do you live around here? And like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, no! I was like, here we go. And I was like, I'm an author. And he was like, oh my God. And I was like, I was like so giddy and like so cheesy about it. And he was like, okay. He couldn't care less. I am totally cringing in the moment, and he could have cared less, right? I like ran to my car. I'm like, that is the most awkward thing I've ever done in my entire life. Like, I am mortified, blah, blah, blah. He could have cared less. He didn't even notice what was happening. He could just like literally never thought about that moment again in his entire life. I like called my mentor. I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened to me. Like, it was just so funny. For me, I made it such a big thing. For him, absolutely not a big thing at all. He never thought about it again a day in his life, but it pulled the Band-Aid off for me. So was it hard for me to say it? Absolutely. Until it wasn't. Until I pulled the Band-Aid off, and then it wasn't. Marketing, which is your second question, is the easiest thing in the world for me. So I don't know why, but it's just the gift that I've been given. And I think that the reason our company has been so successful is because I found a really, really, really deep care for sharing a story. Because for me, like that moment in that nursery, like knowing Like it literally makes me emotional because I know that if I had not shown up for that moment of awareness in the nursery, my children's life would not be what it is. They'd be living a totally different life. All of us, my whole family, like, so my husband's included in that, but like specifically for my children, their life would not be as vivid. It wouldn't be as full. It wouldn't be, their minds would be completely different. The way that I would have parented them would have been completely different. Like everything would have shifted for them if I didn't show up. So I could go on about that, but the point is that I found this very, very deep care for showing up for your story, showing up for your dream, showing up for your life. And then I matched this with what my natural background was, which was in sales and marketing. And so to be able to help people share their story and then be able to actually figure out a very simple and easy way to bring it out to the world, I think is why our authors have been so successful, right? The reason I bring that up is because it brought me to a very simple realization that I think will help everyone, whether you're good at sales and marketing or not, which is very early on in my marketing career in corporate, I was taught by the owner of this company that I worked for almost my entire time in corporate. I worked for the same company. And my boss he was the owner of the company. I didn't work directly with him. He had hundreds of offices. But I met him several times and I would consider him my first mentor, my first, real mentor. And his name is Bernie Halroyd. He has since passed. And he taught me that it is just not about you. It is just not about you. And it took years to shift from like, oh my God, this is awkward. Oh my God, I don't want to pick up the phone. Oh my God, I don't want to go to this meeting. Oh my God, what am I going to say? Oh my God, how am I going to present myself? Oh my gosh, this is about me. And it took years to shift. But once it clicks, I never went back to that mentality. It is never about me when I show up and share a message, whether it's for one of my clients or whether it's for myself. It is always about what is being delivered and what that value is going to do for the person on the other end. And once that clicks over, it just makes it easy to show up, because if you don't bring that value that's going to help that other person, you are doing an extreme disservice, not only to yourself, but really to the world. Like, you're here to do this. You know that. Like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation and people wouldn't be listening this far into our conversation if they didn't know that they were here to do something bigger.
I love that. I want to also talk about ambition, because as a wife and a mother, balancing ambition with a family is not really easy. I think that my kids will tell you, my daughter will say TikTok raised her, because there were times where I was like, I've got to get this done. Like, I have to get this done. I'm so sorry. Like, go, do whatever you need to do. I will do like fend for yourself nights for dinner, where it's like, I bought cereal, we have leftovers, like fend for yourself. I've got to finish this. How have you managed to balance ambition with being a wife, a mom, a mother, and also like personal care?
I had that night last night. I fully intended to cook dinner. Like, it's all still sitting in the refrigerator, and it got to like 7:30, and I was literally on the phone with one of my partners that I have a project with. And she's like laughing, and she's like, I'm at the Burger King drive-thru, so at least you're upping on me, right? Like, you're not at Burger King. And my youngest daughter's like, what's for dinner? I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Make yourself like some mac and cheese. Like, I don't know. Like, I haven't gotten that far, and I'm not going to get that far. Like, it's not going to happen tonight. So everybody fend for yourself. Right. So absolutely that happens. But different things have to happen at different stages. So when I had little kids that could not make themselves macaroni and cheese and fend for themselves, what I did, the best thing I ever did for myself is make a list of all of the things that I did not enjoy doing. Okay. That weren't like, people would say in your zone of genius, but I really kind of took it further. I was like, nope, I don't want to do laundry. I do not, I'm going to tell you something. This is going to sound so bougie. I don't care. I do not enjoy doing things that have to be duplicated, period. Like, in my business, in my life, like dishes. Why am I doing dishes? I'm just going to have to do it again. Like, I didn't accomplish anything. This is such a waste of my time. Like, I only want to spend my time doing things that move the needle. And dishes that are going to just be there right again, like did not move the needle for me. Laundry does not move the needle for me. Like none of this stuff moves the needle for me. So I made a list of all of those things and I hired somebody at like $12 an hour. This was years ago. And they came in. And at first I was like, I'm not making any money. How can I afford to do this? And then I went, no, because if I even get one client, it has paid for this person for however long, right? And it just is a very quick turnaround. And then all of a sudden it just, you know what I mean? Like it just bursts, you know what I mean? Once you make that leap, you know how that works. You have to open the door first. And then once you take that leap, everything will follow. And everyone thinks it should be the other way, right? That's what society would have you believe, is that it has to be the other way. And that's why so many people aren't out there doing these things. So once you release that limiting belief and you say, nope, I'm going to do this for myself, then it really opens up that time and space. It's the only way I survived when my kids were little. Once they got a little bit more independent, that shifted and it became a different balancing game. But the best thing I do for myself is I do like time blocking, I guess is the easiest way to describe it, where there are only certain days that I will take calls. I block off a lot of white space in my calendar. And I'm very, I am more protective of my time than anything else in my life. Like socially, personally, business wise, like you name it. Like I am so protective of my time. That is the only way that I survive and am able to manage everything.
And I love that. I feel like it's so funny to me that like we outsource as businesses, but we never thought to outsource as mothers. And it's like, outsource the work. Like exactly that thing. Like whatever you don't want to do, outsource the work. And just like anything else that you're investing in, yeah, it may hurt in the front end a little bit, like savings wise, money wise, but the gains in the long term will always far outweigh whatever little bit of like hurt here in this space. So Absolutely. outsource. I love that. When you had to start hiring the dream team, right? The Kate Butler dream team, how did you handle those growing pains? Was it just as quick and easy as that thought process of like, what don't I like to do? Let's outsource it. Or were you just like, oh God, I now have to invest in this company and I have to put money towards it? How did you balance that? I feel like I'm growing team members. I'm getting there slower than I anticipated, but because I need the time, right? Baby steps again, baby steps become giant leaps. How, when you decided like, okay, no, I have to grow this team, was it hard for you? Was it easy for you? Or did you just know, okay, this is the next natural step?
Yeah, I think I just knew that this was the next natural step. I'm very big on like an all hands on deck type of thing, right? So yes, we have people that do different jobs, but there's a lot of crossover. You know what I mean? It's not like, just because you're the designer doesn't mean like you might need to do something on the back end of Kajabi, right? Like, and we might need to do that. So our team is very collaborative. Like that's the most important thing to me, is that it really is more of like a collaborative effort and more of like an all hands on deck effort. But the most important thing that I learned along the way was, even if somebody is capable of doing something, that I need people that can work the way I work. And just on the flip side of that, what I teach people when they're building their book business or any business, because it's applicable to all, is that you must build a business that works for you. You have to build a business your way. Even when everyone's like, you can't be on social or like Facebook anymore. Like nobody's on there anymore. You have to build on Instagram. 25,000 followers on Instagram and probably the same on Facebook, but I make seven figures a year on Facebook. And I probably make probably 30,000 of that is from Instagram. Let's be honest, right? Like, so if I had listened to what every single person was telling me, every business strategist, every mentor, and I'm like, that doesn't work for me. That's not what's happening in this business. Right. And so you have to trust yourself and you have to build a business that works for you, a calendar that works for you, a schedule that works for you, systems that work for you. And my brain is insane. Like my brain is freaking insane. So I had to learn, like I stop apologizing for it. And I just had to be like, this is the way my brain works. And so I need you to work around the way that my brain works, because people want to know, how can I support you? And I just started being very honest about that. And I said, the way that you can support me best is by you figuring out how you can work around the way my brain works. And I will show up the way my brain works. And this is the way the company will be. And then you can fill in all of the openings, all of the gaps, all of the bridges. Does that make sense? And I was very honest about that. And so it's very trial and error. And it took a lot of people cannot work that way. So that's okay. And then I have to find the people who can. And that's what we have been able to.
Well, I think that's like the messy part that a lot of people don't talk about is like, yeah, it's trial and error. It's hiring people and firing people, right? Like you don't really know until you start. Someone else's 80% has to be good enough because that's, your 100% is not going to be the same as their 100%. So you sort of have to figure out, okay, what are you willing to compromise on? And then sometimes done is better than perfect, right? We've got to get the thing out. It's just hard for me because it's like, but that's not how I saw it. So that's how my brain works too, where it's just like, but this is how my brain works. Let's get it to like the vision. So that's the hard part right now is like, it's taking time to teach people what the expectations are. And then like the sad part's going to be if it doesn't work out in the long run, if they're like, okay, I can't keep doing it this way, then it's like, okay, great. Now I'm going to try to teach somebody else to do it again. Right. But I'd rather have a team of people that understand the way my brain works, right? Than not, and just accepting less than, I guess, is sort of like where I'm at. And I think a lot of people that are growing their businesses, and whether you're hiring VAs or like publicists, whatever, you have to understand, like you have to work together. There has to be something cohesive that works together. And it's okay if it doesn't, then they're just not your people. I think that was hard for me to understand at first, where it was like, oh, like I can try to find somebody else to fill this space. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, because if it impacts your business, that's money on the table. And it's like, no, we can work together and we can fix this and we can figure out how we can all work together.
I totally agree.
So you went from publishing one book to literally being a publisher. Now that you're in this space of publishing other people's books and you're continuing to publish your own, what is next? Like, is this like, okay, we made it? Or do you see more for Kate Butler and Kate Butler books? Where are we going next?
Yeah. So we're always going somewhere, we're always growing. We're always growing. I really enjoy the creative process. I really enjoy like building, building, creating, scaling, growing, that's really where I thrive. Right. So I don't know that I would ever be able to say like, this is it, we're good. It's not really part of my DNA. And so we love the book vertical. We absolutely love that. And where we want to grow into, at least in this exact moment, is really helping people be more visible now with their message in their book, right? And so we want to bring in new people, of course, that want to share their story, right? Because we still feel like there are a lot of stories out there that aren't being told, right? And so the books will be there as that vehicle to open them up to that. And then the people who have, let's say, published a story or want to do the book and be more visible all at once, we want to step more into like media, right? And so how can we really get you out into all these different mediums, all these different ways, and really teaching people also how to share their story in different ways. Writing your story is not the same as speaking your story. Speaking your story in a keynote is not the same as speaking your story when you get booked for the morning show and you have 3 minutes and 30 seconds to get your message across and capture a national audience when you're on live TV. These are different things, okay? And so what we're stepping into now in the programs that we are currently talking about is really how do we market, how do we leverage, and how do we actually make this book a business, right? And so we're up to a lot. We have a retreat in Italy coming up in June. We do a lot of things, but this is really the space that we really see people stepping into. So we have this story, we have this book, but we didn't publish in vain. We want people to actually know it exists. We want people to read it, and we want you to be very successful in it. So that's where we are right now.
So for people that have an idea, explain that like you are a one-stop shop. you will help them through all of it. Because I don't think I realized that you literally, your team does everything. Explain to people, all right, have an idea. What do I do next?
Yeah. So if you have an idea, literally when, if you were to come to me, Rachel, people say, where do I start? Like, where do you come into the process? And I always say right now. Like, I actually want to come in right now because I don't want you to complete everything and then come to me, because I'm going to change some things. I'm going to look at your manuscript and say, did we include this? How about we put this here? How about we add this? Have you thought of this? Now, what is your goal for this? And if your goal for this, then we probably should have written it this way. So I want people to come with the idea, come with the inception, come with an outline even, that's fine. But that's where we begin to work with people, is with your idea. And we take them through inception of idea all the way to holding your best-selling book in your hand. And we always say the book is the beginning for us. It's like our gateway drug. So every publisher out there will say, like, what do? We publish books. That's the end game. What makes us very different than every other publisher out there is that the book is the beginning for us. It's not the end. So it is not the end game. The book is the beginning. And then it's like, where do we get to? What do you want to do with your book? So then it's like, are we building a company with this? Are you going into media with this? Are you going into a speaking career with this, right? Do you want to be a paid speaker? Do you want to be a media personality? Do you just want to, sell books and sell programs and do the online, entrepreneurship? So whatever direction you want to go in, that's where we go next. But one-stop shop, yes, not just for the book though, for the goal of the book. And that is what makes us so different.
Oh my God, I love that. So if people want to contact you because they're like, oh my God, I love this woman. This is it. This is the answer I've been seeking. What is the best way to do that? I know you've got courses. I know you have a lot of different things happening at the same time, but if they're coming into this space right now, what is the best way to take the next step?
So the best way to take the next step, you can reach out to my team. Support at katebutlerbooks.com is a great way. My website is katebutlerbooks.com, and there's a million ways on there to connect with us. There's some tools on there. There's a really wonderful bestseller guide on there, the ultimate bestseller guide, that will be a beautiful way for anyone to like get started with their outline, right? Or just to kind of check us out a little bit further about the tools and reach out to us that way. You can contact us on social. We're Kate Butler Books everywhere. So there's a lot of ways to reach out to us. You can reach out, like I said, email, website, social. And we're a very customized business. And we've published over 650 number one bestselling authors, but we also continue to insist that I have a hand in every single client. No matter how big our team gets, like I am still the person that is walking you through the strategy. I am still the person that is customizing this to your goals. That's really, really important to us because it's what's gotten us this far and it's what's going to continue to help our clients be successful. So when you reach out to us, you will be talking to an actual person. And most likely you and I will get on the phone and go over your goals to figure out what the right step is for you next.
Well, and to have a customized plan for you, right? It's not a one size fits all. It's completely customized to the writer. And you have a team on your side now. Whereas you were just out there with a dream, you guys are literally make the dream a reality. And I love what you do. I love what you do for people. And I think it's just so, so special.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on with me. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. This is so fun. Thank you, Rachel.